Hello and welcome to the new season of the Drawn and Redrawn, the Making of India's Internal Boundaries podcast. This is a part of a larger India State Stories project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is an undertaking by the Centre for Legislative Education and Research at Flame University in Pune. In this new season, we embark on a journey through the fascinating histories and narratives of each Indian state and union territories, exploring the pivotal events, influential personalities, and societal transformations that have shaped the subcontinent. In this 9th episode, we learn about the interesting history behind the formation of state of Haryana. This episode is based on a corresponding article written by our team at India State Stories. These articles have been converted to audio conversations with the help of Google's Notebook LM. You can find the relevant article link in the show notes. Now, let's dive into the conversation.
So today we're looking at a state that I think a lot of people just, take for granted. You look at the map of North India, and there it is, Haryana. It feels established, solid, prosperous.
But digging into the sources you shared, I realized I had the timeline completely wrong in my head. I kind of assumed Haryana and Punjab are always distinct, maybe cousins, but they were actually conjoined twins, and the surgery to separate them was incredibly complicated.
It was a very long, very difficult surgery. And you're right, the narrative often gets simplified. We tend to think of state formation in India as purely linguistic. You speak this, I speak that, let's have a border. But the story of Haryana is different. It's a story where economics, trauma, and political maneuvering are just as important as language. Maybe even more so.
That is what really jumped out at me. This wasn't just about preserving a culture. It was about survival.
Yeah.
And to understand that survival instinct, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to 1947.
Absolutely. The year of independence, but also the year of partition. You cannot understand the psychology of this region without understanding the scar left by the Radcliffe Line.
The line that cut Punjab in two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before 1947, Punjab was this massive province. It was the breadbasket of the British Empire. It was wealthy, politically powerful.
Right.
But when Cyril Radcliffe drew that line, he didn't just divide land, he bifurcated an economic engine. The Muslim-majority West Punjab went to Pakistan. The Hindu and Sikh-majority East Punjab stayed with India.
And we are focusing on that East Punjab piece. Now, I think the common assumption, and I was definitely guilty of this, is that once the partition happened, the Indian side of Punjab was a cohesive unit. Everyone's on the same team, right?
I think so.
But the sources suggest a massive aha moment regarding internal inequality almost immediately.
That is the crucial detail. As soon as the dust settled from the partition, people started looking around at this new East Punjab and realized it was lopsided. Deeply lopsided.
Let's unpack that, because we're talking about two specific regions inside this new state, the Northwest and the Southeast.
Correct. The Northwest region, what we largely think of as modern Punjab today, was, you could say, the favored child of geography and colonial policy. It had the rivers. It had the famous canal colonies established by the British. The soil was rich, alluvial, and productive. The infrastructure was there.
And the Southeast. This is the area that would eventually become Haryana.
The contrast couldn't be starker. The sources describe it as a sandy Bagar. It was arid.
Right, a sandy bay.
It was dependent on rainfall, which made it prone to famine. The British hadn't invested nearly as much in irrigation or infrastructure there.
So right from the starting gate in 1947, you have a state where one half is a Ferrari and the other half is, well, a bicycle with a flat tire.
That is a fair analogy. The people in the Hindi-speaking Southeast, the future Haryanvis, found themselves in a state where the political power, the economic focus, and the development funds were naturally flowing to the prosperous Northwest.
So before we even get to language, we have this feeling of being the poor relation.
Exactly. The grievance was economic first. They felt neglected. They felt that their development was being sacrificed to maintain the prosperity of the Punjabi-speaking belt. That sense of economic injustice is the foundation of everything that comes later.
Now, if that simple north-south divide wasn't enough of a headache, the map of 1948 throws a massive wrench into the works. I was looking at the diagrams in the research, and I saw this acronym, PSU, PEPSU.
PEPSU.
And honestly, looking at the map, it looks like someone dropped a puzzle on the floor and lost half the pieces.
PEPSU is a fascinating administrative disaster. It stands for the Patiala and East Punjab States Union. You see, the British didn't rule every inch of India directly. there were princely states.
Okay.
In this region, there were 8 different eastern Punjab states ruled by local maharajas.
And when independence happens, we can't just leave them as independent kingdoms.
No, that wasn't an option. But the state's ministry in Delhi felt that merging them immediately into the wider East Punjab province was impractical and mistimed. They weren't ready for full integration.
So they came up with a temporary solution.
So they decided to bundle them together into a union. Since Patiala was the largest and most powerful, it became the anchor.
But the geography, explain the geography to the listeners because it is wild.
Imagine a state that isn't one solid block of land. PepsiSU was essentially an archipelago on land. It consisted of 5 disconnected bits of territory.
5.
5. These islands were floating inside the larger East Punjab province.
So to go from one part of Pepsi to another, you might have to drive through a completely different jurisdiction.
Constantly. It was an administrative nightmare. How do you police that? How do you collect taxes? How do you build roads?
And I imagine the politics were just as messy as the map.
Oh, it was a pressure cooker. Forming a stable government in PepsiU was nearly impossible. You had a constant power tussle. On one side, you had the Indian National Congress.
Okay.
On the other, you had the Shiromani Akali Dal, the SAD. The Akalis represented Sikh interests, and they were very strong in the Pepsi region.
And this instability in Pepsiu is what triggers the first real demand for redrawing the line.
Yes. The Akali Dal looked at this fragmented map and realized that their political power was being diluted. The Sikhs were scattered across these administrative messes. They started arguing for consolidation.
The Punjabi Suba.
They wanted a Punjabi Suba, a province where Punjabi speakers and largely Sikhs would be the majority. They wanted to merge the Sikh-heavy districts of PepsiSU and East Punjab into one solid governable state.
Okay, so the Akali Dal is pushing for a Punjabi Suba. The Congress government in the center is terrified of anything that looks like separatism. They need a fix, and their solution is the Sachar Formula.
Right.
Now, this sounds like a high school math equation, but it was actually about language.
October 1949. This was the attempted compromise. The Congress leadership thought, if the problem is language, let's solve it with a syllabus.
Always a risky move. What was the plan?
They proposed dividing the province into 2 zones, strictly for educational purposes, a Punjabi zone and a Hindi zone.
How did that work in practice?
The idea was, if you lived in the Punjabi zone, the medium of instruction in schools would be Punjabi. Hindi would be a compulsory second language.
And vice versa.
If you lived in the Hindi zone, the reverse applied. You learned in Hindi, but you had to take Punjabi as a second subject.
On paper, that sounds reasonable. Like, hey, let's respect the local language. Why did it blow up?
Because it forced a binary choice on a population that was historically fluid. Suddenly, language wasn't just how you spoke to your neighbor. It became your political identity. It became a proxy for your religion.
Yeah, harden the lines.
The Sachar Formula codified the difference. It made people pick a side.
And instead of cooling things down, it turned up the heat.
It polarized the state completely. And this leads us to what I found to be the most shocking detail in the entire research packet, the 1951 census.
I had to read this twice. Usually a census is the most boring, bureaucratic thing imaginable. You count people, you ask what language they speak, you file the report. But here, we have the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, personally intervening to stop the data collection.
That is how volatile the situation was. By 1951, the atmosphere was toxic. Hindu organizations were campaigning, telling Hindus in the Punjabi zone to lie and record their mother tongue as, even if they spoke Punjabi at home, just to deny the Akali Dal the demographic numbers for their state. The Akalis, meanwhile, were militant about recording Punjabi.
It was a data war. People were weaponizing the census form.
Exactly. And it was getting violent. There were clashes in the streets. Nehru looked at this and realized that if enumerators went door to door asking Hindi or Punjabi, it would spark widespread riots. So he made an unprecedented executive decision.
He scrubbed the question.
For the state of Punjab, the language data was effectively nullified. They used a joint option, Punjabi Hindi. They lumped them together.
Unbelievable.
They effectively said, we are too afraid of the reality to record it, so we're just going to pretend everyone speaks the same thing.
That is incredible. It's kicking the can down the road in the most literal sense possible. If we don't write it down, maybe the problem doesn't exist.
Precisely. But as we know, ignoring a problem rarely solves it.
So we fast forward to 1953. The government sets up the state's reorganization commission, the SRC. This is the big moment. They're redrawing the map of the whole country. Everyone brings their wish list to the table.
And the list for this region was very specific. The Akali Dal went to the SRC and made a strong, logical plea for the Punjabi Suba. They wanted to merge PPC with the contiguous Punjabi-speaking districts.
And what about the leaders from the Haryana region, the Hindi speakers in the southeast? Did they want their own state yet?
They did, but interestingly, their demand was born of frustration. They approached the SRC and said, look, we are tired of being second-class citizens in Punjab.
They just wanted out.
Some of them even proposed leaving Punjab entirely and merging with the culturally similar districts of western Uttar Pradesh. They just wanted out.
So you have two clear groups asking for a divorce. The SRC has to grant it, right? It seems like the obvious solution.
You would think so. But the SRC did something that, in hindsight, seems almost arrogant. They look at the Akali demand and they look at the Haryana demand and they said, no, we reject both.
They rejected self-determination for everyone.
They went in the complete opposite direction. Instead of dividing, they chose to amalgamate. In 1956, they took that messy PIP-SU union, they took the hill districts of Himachal Pradesh, and they smashed them all into Punjab to create what was called Maha Punjab, or Greater Punjab.
Wait, I need to understand the logic here. The Sachar Formula failed. The census had to be censored because of violence. And the SRC's solution was to make the state bigger and more diverse. How did they justify that?
This is where the deep dive gets really interesting linguistically. The SRC report actually claimed that there was no real language problem in Punjab.
How could they say that with a straight face?
They used a technical argument. They claimed that the superstructure of the Punjabi language was essentially just a dialect of Western Hindi.
Oh, wow.
They argued that the line of demarcation between Punjabi and Hindi was theoretical and blurred. Therefore, there was no administrative need to draw a line.
That feels incredibly dismissive. It's like telling a distinct culture, you're just a variation of the mainstream, so get over it.
It was an attempt at nation building through denial. They thought if they created a massive administrative unit, the petty differences of language and religion would eventually disappear into a larger secular identity.
Prioritizing convenience over reality.
They prioritized administrative convenience over cultural reality.
Did it work?
For a blink of an eye, politically speaking. After the Maha Punjab merger in 1956, the Congress and the Akali Dal actually formed an alliance. It looked like peace.
What?
But alliances born of convenience usually don't last.
And the root causes, the economic disparity, the cultural friction, those hadn't gone away.
Not at all. By 1960, the partnership broke. The Akali Dal launched a renewed movement for the Punjabi Suba. But this time, something fundamental had changed on the other side of the equation.
The Haryana side.
Yes. Up until now, the Haryana demand was a bit scattered, but in the 1960s, it found its voice. We see the rise of the Haryana Lok Samiti.
Introduce us to them. How did they change the game?
The Haryana Lok Samiti was formed in April 1961 with strong backing from the Arya Samaj. They changed the narrative. They didn't just ask for separation, they actively campaigned against the imposition of Punjabi.
Okay.
They argued that in this Maha Punjab, the Hindi language and culture were being suffocated.
And this brings us back to that aha moment from the beginning, the economic argument.
Exactly. They brought the receipts. They stopped being polite about the development gap. They argued that while the state was called Greater Punjab, the funds were still only flowing to the Punjabi areas. They portrayed the Haryana region as being treated like a colony exploited for revenue, but ignored for investment.
So now the pressure is building from both sides. You have the Punjabi Suba movement squeezing from the northwest and the Haryana movement squeezing from the southeast. The center is holding on, trying to keep this Maha Punjab together. What finally breaks the dam?
History interrupts. We have to look at the national context. In 1964, Prime Minister Nehru passes away. Now, Nehru was ideologically opposed to dividing states based on religion or community. With him gone, the biggest barrier to the Punjabi Suba was removed.
And then the wars.
Yes. India faced the 1962 war with China, and crucially for this story, the 1965 war with Pakistan.
Why was the 1965 war so critical for the map of Punjab?
It changed the psychological landscape of the country. The war was fought largely on the Western Front, right on the doorstep of Punjab. The Sikh community, the peasantry, the soldiers, they mobilized for the war effort in a way that was heroic. Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan wasn't just a slogan. It was their reality.
So the argument that a Punjabi Suba would be anti-national or separatist started to crumble.
Completely. You cannot question the patriotism of people who are bleeding for the country on the front lines. The immense contribution of the Sikhs in 1965 generated a wave of national sympathy. The government in Delhi realized that the demand for a Punjabi Suba could no longer be ignored or suppressed. It would be unjust.
It's fascinating how external conflict can resolve internal deadlock. The war validated the loyalty of the region, which gave the government the political cover to finally say, okay, let's redraw the map.
It was the catalyst. And so in 1966, the decision was finally made.
This brings us to the resolution, September 18th, 1966, the Punjab Reorganization Act. This is the moment the map we know today is drawn.
It was effectively a trifurcation. They took Maha Punjab and split it 3 ways.
Walk us through the divorce settlement. Who got what?
First, the Hindi-speaking districts in the southeast, those arid, economically lagging areas we discussed, were consolidated to form the new state of Haryana. This was the birth of the 17th state of the Indian Union.
Finally, a state of their own.
Second, the Punjabi-speaking northwestern districts were carved out to form the new Punjab, the Punjabi Suba the Akali Dal had wanted for so long.
And the hills.
The northeastern hill districts, places like Kangra and Shimla, were culturally and linguistically distinct from both the plains groups. So the act reversed the 1956 merger. These areas were transferred to the Union territory of Himachal Pradesh.
So everyone goes to their separate corners. But there was one piece left over. One very expensive, very modern piece. The capital, Chandigarh.
The joint asset. This was the stickiest point of the negotiation.
Oh.
Both Punjab and Haryana claimed Chandigarh.
Of course.
Punjab wanted it because it was the historic capital region. Haryana wanted it because it was on their border and they didn't have any other developed city to serve as a capital. Neither side would back down.
It's the classic King Solomon problem. You can't cut the baby in half.
Well, the government tried to cut the baby in half, administratively speaking. They made Chandigarh a union territory. It belongs to neither state fully. It is administered directly by the central government, yet it serves as the joint capital for both Punjab and Haryana.
It really is unique. You walk into the Secretariat building, and one wing is Haryana, the other wing is Punjab.
It symbolizes the entangled history of these two states. They separated, they have distinct identities, distinct economies now, but they remain linked at the hip. They share the capital, they share the high court, they share the water issues.
So, if we look back at this journey, it's wild. We started with the trauma of the Radcliffe Line, splitting the province. Then we had the disconnected bits of Pepisiu floating around like islands. We tried the Sachar Formula, which failed. We had the 1951 census, where people were afraid to state their language.
Then the SRC tried to force integration with Maha Punjab, claiming Punjabi was just a dialect. And finally, the economic realities and the cultural identities catalyzed by the 1965 war forced the government to accept reality.
It really shows that you can't just draw lines on a map based on administrative convenience.
That is the core lesson here. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises a very important question. The SRC in 1956 tried to decree that there was no language problem. They tried to use administrative power to smooth over deep cultural distinctiveness.
It didn't work.
No. The cultural and economic realities eventually redrew the map. So the provocative thought for our listeners is this. Can administrative lines ever truly suppress distinct regional identities? Or will the identity of a people always, eventually, find a way to shape the geography?
That is something to chew on. Identity versus administration. Who wins in the long run? I think Haryana's story gives us a pretty clear answer.
It certainly does.
Thank you so much for breaking this down with us. It's been a fascinating look into how the India we see today was actually made.
My pleasure. It is a story worth knowing.
And thank you to you, the listener, for joining this deep dive into the story of Haryana. We will catch you on the next one.